sometimes there's a kind of love that makes you very aware of the trouble that your beloved is in, even though he or she is not speaking about it. Or sometimes there's a sense, you know, almost a trepidation, of worry, and you don't know why, but you have an anxiety over a brother or sister, a child, and you don't know why, and then it turns out that they were in trouble. You know, these are not made up things. It's, you know, I know we live in a rational world, but sometimes it gets too rational for my liking, right? I have another piece here, which is where the grandmother, the frightening one. She's wonderful, but I'm not going to read that. I'm going to read a little bit for you about, and I want to kind of dedicate this to Khadijah, because Khadijah is into hair, and she's going to be a bit obsessed about that sometimes ago, and to the extent where I remember I was writing the book when we were talking about hair, and I did this whole thing on hair in this book, you know what I mean? So if the publisher didn't reject this book because of the hair thing and a plain human, as it happened, they liked it. Now let me see if I can find the part about it. It is about it's something I played with. It's upping the ante in this book. You know, in the Caribbean, I suppose in most cultures, but particularly where I grew up and amongst my people, and you will know that your mother is sacred. You know, nobody messes with your mother. You don't abuse it. This is why, and African Americans are a bit like that too. You know, your mother this, your mother that, because they know that that's the most profound insult that anybody can throw at you. And men don't mess. You know, it doesn't matter if she hates them or she threw them out of the house when they were 10, right? But you don't say anything negative about one's mother. It's a taboo, right? That's what it is. But I wanted to find a situation where, in fact, a daughter, especially, this one, high-tempered Elena, one of the characters in the book, almost kills her own mother. Why? Because this mother of hers didn't like her son. She hated the boy. Really, you know, she blamed him for everything that went wrong with the family. And there was a time when Dika, that's the grandmother, picked up a piece of metal to kind of, and coming like that to hit this little boy, and she would have killed him. She would have brained the poor child. And Elena was eating. She's very quiet. She doesn't get vexed. Maybe she gets angry once every year, but when she does, you have to run. She's that kind of person. And Elena was sitting by the fire, eating a piece of chicken bone, and you know, I don't know if you all don't know this here because you got fancy stoves. But anyway, you scoop the coals out when it's, you know, too much, and you kind of empty the fireplace like that. And she saw her mother going for her son, and she just did very casually, almost as though she was scratching her head, and she just reached for the bucket and just filled it with coals, and she stood up. And Dika saw her daughter with this bucket of fire in her hand, knowing that if she struck this child, she was going to burn. You know, and that obviously it modified completely. It shocked the woman that my daughter wants to kill me for killing her son. You know, we can't be like that. You know, and but there is love. There is love. There is love. And at the end of it all, Dika decides Elena is dead. We live in the same house, but she's dead. Okay? And this is Elena trying to make up. I know I talk a lot, but it's a big book. Right. This is Elena really suffering now. Mornings. Elena made a cup of cocoa, covered it with a saucer, and placed it beside Dika. It sat on the step till afternoon, curdling at the top as the heat got sucked out of it. At the end of the day, Elena would go to the step, lift the cup, and stare at the contents as if she were hoping it would speak to her. Then she would go to the back of the house and tip it into the soil. She hung there a while, looking down at the moisture at her feet before sighing heavily and walking back into the house. And she's also pregnant, by the way. Dinner times, she served her mother first, her hand bringing the end of her cotton dress to the enamel of the bowl and polishing it till it threw back the flames at them. Dika would not take the outstretched bowl of food. She watched them eat her body a soft shape against the steps. Then when she felt like it, she would strip a square of banana leaf from the tree beside the house, bend over the pot, and serve herself. It did not change his mother's gestures. It did not modify the stillness in her eyes, now downturned all the time, her face fuller than they'd ever seen it, her shoulders lower than she'd ever held them. She did these same things every day. The cup of steaming cocoa, the brightly polished bowl of food, the tireless, wordless gestures, and when she spoke, she addressed her mother softly, as if she were trying to ease her out of an awful dream. Sundays were worse. His mother's hands were restless from the time she woke, for she'd been washing and braiding Dika's hair since she was a girl. The task had fallen to her, they said, for reasons no one cared to remember. And anyway, it wasn't that which mattered now. What mattered was that after all these years, grooming her mother's hair had become more than habit. It had become a knowledge that settled in her body. For Eleanor understood her mother's hair far better than she did her own. Her fingers pulled at the very first strands of grey there. Dika had blamed her in part for it, pointing to the time she brought her belly home and would not name the father. And by the passing of the years, the rest of Dika's hairs had whitened beneath Eleanor's fingers. Come Sundays, without Dika's bony shoulders against her stomach, without the small pressure of her mother's head against her chest, it left Eleanor Bender with a hollowness and an empty gestures. Her hands still did the things they'd always done on Sundays. The same slow downward strokes, the straightening and the parting, the plaiting and the oiling, the raising of the shine with coconut oil mixed with cinnamon grass and mint. Come Sundays, his mother's hands had nothing solid to hold on to. Stop here. I can stop here because you might want to ask questions, right?
Yes, we have a very short time for questions,
right.
about 10 minutes,
you see what I mean?
so don't be shy.
Ready.